Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We're so excited to have you. This is the fifth installment of the Center for Nonprofit and NGO Studies Career Conversations, conversations for Huskies who want to make a difference, from the major of NNGO, Center for Nonprofit and NGO Studies, also known as the Make a Difference major. So the mission of the Center for Nonprofit and NGO Studies is to understand the role of nonprofits and NGOs in society and the world, to analyze social structures and create social change, and to improve lives and serve communities. In other words, to be good at doing good, and to know the impacts of what we do here in DeKalb or wherever your community is, as well as abroad. My name is Mark Schuler. I am the acting director and the first joint hire in NNGO since 2012. Today, we're going to be talking about careers in trade associations. We were just having a little conversation before the recording started, and it may not make sense. The word trade association may not be something that folks immediately identify with. So maybe we can start a little bit there on what those mean. But I wanted to also give a chance for Julie Ann O'Connell, the assistant director, to say her words of welcome before I introduce our invited guests.
Thanks, Mark. We're excited to have people here to be able to do these career conversations, because one of the things that we hear over and over is that, you know, the nonprofit whole landscape is large, and it is hard for our students sometimes to think about, like, wow, do I want a job with animals or older people or, you know, soup kitchens, or do I really want a marketing job, or, you know, where am I going to do good? And this semester we are having a couple of these sessions. We had one on foundations, jobs with foundations last month, and this month with trade associations. And I think that is one of the things that our students maybe, and I think sometimes a lot of people in the nonprofit sector don't fully understand just the breadth and depth of the nonprofit sector, and that not everything is a 501c3 charitable organization. So I'm excited for our alumni to be here tonight to talk to us about their careers. And for those of you who are on with us now and those who watch this later, to be able to learn about these really great viable options for careers once Huskies graduate from NIU. So thanks for being here.
So as Julianne said, this is an opportunity to reconnect with some of our old our alums, and this is a really wonderful opportunity to have that chance to have a conversation about what happens after you graduate. So the leap from undergrad to the job market in a sector as dynamic and diverse as the nonprofit and NGO sector is leaves folks with many questions. So we appreciate folks coming back to take the time to share your insights with us. So I'm going to introduce you by alphabetical order. And so we have Stephanie Corona, who graduated from NIU with a certificate in nonprofit and NGO studies and earned a BA, providing her with a solid foundation in community development principles and practices. Currently, she serves as an education and membership specialist at a trade association, where she makes data-driven decisions to develop continuing education courses and products tailored to resonate with the target audience. Stephanie's dedication to advancing professional development and fostering community engagement highlights her commitment to associations. So Stephanie, welcome back, and thank you for sharing your time with us tonight. And then Caitlin Hahne has worked in the association space for 10 years. Currently, she is a manager of online learning at the American Association of Nurse, I hope I pronounced this correctly, anesthesiology. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Don't ask me to say it twice. And it's worked for AANA for 6 years. She manages all online continuing education, including content development and maintenance of the learning management system. Additionally, she's spoken at 2 conferences, DevLearn 2022 and ASAE Annual Meeting 2023 on content creation utilizing microlearning. Caitlin, welcome back and thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start with your thinking about maybe switching the order, but I'm gonna stick with our original plan. Let's tell us about yourself. Why did you pick NIU and NGO? And what were you looking for when you graduated? And Julianne, do feel free to join us because I know you have something to say here as well.
Would you like me to go ahead and start?
Sure.
Okay. Well, again, I'm Stephanie. I transferred to NIU during COVID, so 2020, and I transferred from the University of Louisville. I picked NIU because of their equestrian team and that it was close to home. When I learned about the Center of Nonprofit and NGO Studies, I knew I had to take some courses in there and dabble because I was previously employed at a nonprofit, and I knew that I wanted my career to head towards this path, but I wasn't sure which industry to serve. So that's where the nonprofit center came in, and graduated in 2023. So thank you for inviting me back.
I am Caitlin Hahne. So I decided to come to NIU. Well, my parents both went to NIU, so it runs in the family. And actually, when I first started at NIU, I was in the social work major, but after a semester, it really just wasn't the right fit for me. And I knew that I wanted to do something to help people. And then I discovered NGO, and it was a great fit.
I love that. And I'm going to hop in because my first job out of NIU was with a trade association. So I came to NIU back in the days before you actually visited, 17 colleges and applied to that many. At that point, my parents were like, you're going to go to a directional school, like north, south, east, west, Illinois. And my first day on campus was for the honors retreat, the fall that I started. I had never been on campus before. And it was interesting. Then after political science and Spanish double major, back in the days where you looked at the Chicago Tribune for a job, there was a little job ad. It didn't even say what company it was, but it sounded so much fun, like so much fun. It was on Michigan Avenue and you got to travel, and it was doing some program stuff. And I thought, like, I can do that. And I applied for that job. And when I got to, after they offered it to me, the woman who was interviewing me was like, so I'm so curious, you didn't have a lot of the skills that we needed. What made you apply for this? And I was kind of taken aback because she had just offered me the job. And I was like, well, it just seemed fun and I thought I could do it. And I'm like, but why did you hire me? And she said, because I knew if you could have done the things at NIU that you did, I was involved, very involved, that I could teach you whatever you wanted to know. But also she had gone to NIU. She was a Husky and she had been involved in some of the same organizations that I had been when she was an undergrad. Our years didn't cross over. So that was my first introduction to a trade association, the National Association of Realtors. I had no idea what a trade association was. Yeah, so that's my NIU story.
And did they do this when you were a student, or is this new?
That's new.
Okay. I would love to know when that started, because I see these photos, I'm just curious as to, obviously this is a llama, not a dog.
Well, my kids say that it's the quiet coyote.
Mm.
Okay.
Don't know.
So thank you all for that. So we see a different range of what we were looking for, and we all started out in a different, slightly different direction. We heard from Stephanie first. Why don't we hear from Caitlin, and then Stephanie? Tell us about your career journey. What led you to the sector, trade association? nonprofit NGO sector.
Yes, so I've worked for 3 associations since I graduated. My first association was very small. It was for accountants in the media sector. So a very niche group. And I started as a membership coordinator there. Honestly, I applied for so many jobs in so many different nonprofit areas, and that's the job that I got, so I went with it. And then, as I did that, I kind of realized I don't know if membership is really what I want to get into. So then I started to work at the American Academy of Pediatrics, so more of a medical association, and I worked with their life support programs. It was a lot of more like support, like technology support, because there were online courses and things of that nature. So that kind of was where I kind of found my lane, I guess. I started getting more into the tech side of things, and a job opportunity presented itself to work at the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology. And I started there just as a professional development coordinator. And then my role as I moved throughout the years became more and more specialized to online learning. And so that's where I'm at now, and I absolutely love it. It allows me to be creative, but also, as I put it, help people help people. So I, help design curriculum for medical professionals who then use that knowledge and administer anesthesia. So I'm still doing that part of the work where I'm contributing to society, and I'm, like I said, helping people help people. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am. I don't think I ever really thought that this is where I would be, but now that I'm here, I don't think I'd want to be anywhere else.
I love it. Helping people help people. That's another nice tagline to what we do. So yeah, I find that also really rewarding myself. Stephanie, what led you to the sector? And tell us about your career journey. It can be starting from before you went back to NIU. You obviously had some experience in the sector before you came here.
I did, thank you. So I've been working in the nonprofit sector for 3 years now. I've worked for 2 different associations thus far. I fell upon this first association by networking. So I had your average college part-time job, and I had a mentor in my life who knew what I was working towards and knew my passion for people, and asked me if I would like a position as an education coordinator at a nonprofit. And Caitlin, to both of our surprises, I worked at the other Anna. So I was at the Arthroscopy Association of North America. So our 2 companies tend to get mixed up because in the realm of nonprofits, you will learn everything has an acronym.
Yes.
So make sure you always have the right one and you're always saying it the right way. But nonetheless, my time at Anna taught me program development and how to connect different professionals in different levels of their careers. What I really enjoyed was being able to host and provide a welcoming environment for those to interact with other professionals, hoping with the networking opportunity that they can advance their career. In my present position, I work at the Fabricators and Manufacturers Association. My title here is I am the Education and Membership Specialist. And what I do here is I help facilitate different programs in specialty and metal fabricating. And thus far, I've really built most of my experience from my NGO courses and from real life examples. So as you move forward, you remain and retain all of the information you've been presented and apply it to what's in front of you.
Great. Yeah, alphabet soup is what we used to call it. It's just lots and lots of acronyms, which is why I always like to say the center if I'm trying to abbreviate, and then if they have to ask. the Center for Nonprofit and NGO Studies. Because NNGO is hard for folks to remember. So,
Stephanie, I'm laughing though, talking about like you have to kind of be careful about those acronyms. I worked for the National Association of Realtors, which is NAR. But people often think that it's the National Realtor Association, NRA, like, so.
It
it's
happens.
not.
It happens.
Right.
It's nice to know that the other organization is thriving though, right? Somebody's calling for them.
Yep.
so yeah, same with AAA, American Anthropological Association. Everyone thinks it's the Auto Club, which is a lobby group. Actually, most people don't know what their main purpose is. Yeah. So speaking of like clarity, I'm not sure that many people know what a trade association is. So in your words, what is a trade association? Is that the same thing as a union? And talk about what your group does, or in the case of Julianne, what your group did. So I'm going to put Julianne on the spot here first. How would you define trade association for everybody?
So for me, especially with the National Association of Realtors, it's the largest trade association in the world. We have 1.5 million members. Although some people will say that ARP is the largest trade association. So I think there's a lot of, what is, to your point, Mark, what is a trade association? At the Realtor Association, we're a member. I still say we are. That's hilarious. I haven't worked there in like 10 years. But we're a membership organization. So we have a federated structure. We have a national organization, we have state organizations, and then local organizations. So there's a DeKalb County Association of Realtors, an Illinois Association of Realtors, and a national association. So we do things that help our members move forward in their careers. So I happen to work for a department that specifically worked with the professional staff of local and state organizations. So we designed programming for them, professional development programming. But overall for NAR, it's a membership organization that definitely helped lobby for fair housing and home ownership in America, but also then helps keep its membership up to date on rules and regulations and laws, and helps them, make a living with the American dream. That's the tagline.
Thank you. How about Caitlin?
Sure. So just to kind of piggyback off of that, being at a medical association, we also have a large emphasis on promoting patient safety and evidence-based practice standards. We do have a committee that writes those types of documents. And the mission for AANA is advances, supports, and protects nurse anesthesiology. So there is a big portion of the association that advocates for the profession. So with my specific association, our membership is made of nurse anesthesiologists. And it's kind of a head-to-head battle between the physician anesthesiologist and the nurse anesthesiologist. So there's a lot of advocacy that goes on to kind of make sure that our members can practice in their states. And similar to what Julianne had said, we have state associations as well as the national, and I work for the national one. And then one other thing that's worth highlighting is that our members are required to maintain their certification through CE activities. So that is what I'm heavily involved in, are creating those online CE activities that our members can take in order to maintain that certification.
Great. Thank you. Stephanie?
Yeah, to add on, a trade association, what I've learned thus far is it's an association or a group that offers industry-specific resources and information, and that is what would encompass a trade association. And for example, the Fabricators and Manufacturers Association unites the industry around a common purpose. It's to shape the future of the metals industry and in turn shape the world. And that is where we apply our resources to. We want to attract the current and future talent of the industry, develop their skill set, and engage them in their community through continuing education opportunities. Now, an interesting contrast point I'd like to add here is our members do not need continuing education requirements in order to maintain their certificates. So our education offerings are optional. With that, we have to try and work with our community to understand what the audience needs and create the curriculum that best fits for them. We do this through different committees and councils, just like Caitlin, and the member organizations based off of that, where we provide the structure of the curriculum and our industry experts provide the content.
So this is a wide range of activities, but what I'm hearing things in common are that members, so a profession, could be the American Medical Association or the Association of Journalists, or get together to pool their resources to hire folks to do things on their behalf, find out information, be current on laws, lobby to change those laws, and make sure that the members have the up-to-date information or qualifications. Is that a good summary, or did I miss something? I'm just trying to summarize what I heard from all three of you for the YouTube audience.
I see commonalities.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so then what is your job title? What exactly do you do for the association? And since Stephanie is still on my screen, why don't we start with you?
Of course. So again, I'm FMA's Education and Membership Specialist, and my primary responsibility is to develop education programs. This entails creating assessment tools, certificates, and virtual as well as in-person course content and products. I serve as staff liaison for various councils consisting of industry experts, and together we align the programs to fit the industry's needs and trends.
Thank you. Julian, what was your title back at the NAR, not to be confused with the other acronym?
Exactly. I started out as a program coordinator, and at that point I was doing developing professional development programs that often we were doing those at national and state meetings. The National Association of Realtors has 4 national meetings a year, and then different state associations or regions have them at different times. So developing professional development programming then, or for those, but then by the end of my career, then I was the director of, director of professional development for my division, which was specifically just for local and state association people. And like Stephanie, our whole team did programming for those meetings, but also we had certifications. And so one of the things I developed was actually the Certified Realtor Association exec, where people would study, like they would take classes, and we pulled together all of the study materials, and it was a national certification program. And much like Caitlin, ASAE's CAE. So yeah, so that's how I ended up, was just, yeah, developing designations and certifications for our people.
Thank you. Caitlin?
So I am the manager of online learning, and I do have a specialist that reports to me. I am also in the professional development department, and we kind of have a two-prong. I am managing of online learning, and then we also have our live meetings and workshops, which is our other prong. Basically, I do a lot of what Julianne just said. I produce and manage online continuing education content. I work with several of our members to create educational offerings, and then I also manage our learning management system, and I provide technical support to members. I do quite a bit of instructional design now, which I never thought I would be doing that right now. But what was great is that I did a certificate program in instructional design that my association funded. So I feel very fortunate. And I think that that might be one of the benefits too of working for an association, is that there is a lot of professional development support. So sending you to conferences, certificate programs, things of that nature to kind of further your knowledge in what you're doing. And they're very supportive that way. And then I do offer member support for any of the online education activities. So
I'd like to hop on that, Caitlin, because I think that was something I had not imagined. I didn't know when I took a job with a trade association, is that I was designing programs for them, not really having, that wasn't my specific background at NIU. But I was a decent writer and was able to understand, I was passionate about home ownership and just how that, leveled the playing field. And so I got into it that way. But at my association, they were like, we would pay you if you wanted to get a master's. And so Loyola University was right downtown on Michigan Avenue. And they had one in curriculum design. So I was able, I had never thought of that. But that was a really great perk on top of some other things that I got to, that they supported that kind of learning, and that it was important to them that the people who were doing the work had the certifications or the background that they needed. I didn't know that that was going to be a thing.
Yeah, so being in a sector that invests in its people is another benefit to working in these kind of organizations. Mission-driven organizations tend to be a little more on top of taking care of the folks that work for them. Even if the salary may not be the same that you would think that you might get at a private for-profit company, but as Julianne mentioned in an earlier conversation, those salary levels do remain competitive until you become like a Jeff Bezos or whatever. But until that point, the nonprofit and NGO sector does look pretty well. Does pretty well compared to its for-profit counterparts.
And I would say trade associations, it's interesting. I don't have any statistics on that. But Caitlin and Stephanie, you may have some thoughts on this. My guess is that trade associations, C6 organizations that derive a lot of their income from membership dues, have salaries. I know my salary at the Realtor Association was significant compared to my other peers at that time. And so my guess is that is probably the same. The C4s and C6s might trend higher than C3 charitable organizations, like a generality, but
yeah, for sure. I'd say my salary is competitive with even for-profit. And the benefits that I get, like healthcare, time off, are amazing. Actually, my association went down to a 4-day work week. So we work Monday through Thursday, and we proved during the pandemic we can get our work done. So we now have 4-day work weeks, which is an insane perk. I never thought I would ever be in that situation, but it's fantastic.
And something about being membership driven has to stay relevant to the members. And as Julia mentioned, having membership dues be a big portion of the organization's annual budget, I think says, something that they do have to invest in their workforce, because the workforce has to be accountable to those members or they stop joining, So last question we had was what your job title was. So next one would be, what is a typical day at work for you? Can you tell us a little bit about the backstage, the unglamorous work? And so since we heard that Caitlin only works 4 days a week, why don't we start with you? So what is that typical work day for you?
So, as you had said, we're membership driven. So we are accountable to the members, and we do have some very opinionated ones. So that can be a challenge. And, I think with any nonprofit, you're wearing many hats, and that doesn't change in the association space. I mean, I'm doing, tech support, customer service, and then I'm on the other side of the spectrum, creating curriculum and course design, and then, project management. You're really doing a little bit of everything. And I think as well, I would say our working hours, well, yes, I work Monday through Thursday. We're working with members that have full-time jobs. So we're kind of at the mercy of their schedule in terms of like committee meetings, or if I'm working with a subject matter expert that, we're creating a course together. I'm kind of, like I said, at the mercy of their schedule and when they can meet, especially when they're, in the OR, they're trying to fit in things in tiny parts of their day in order to help me do my job. So I wouldn't say that, that I'd say too, I do work live meetings as well, and those are very, very long, unglamorous days. We're working from like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., putting on the live programming. So those few days are a lot, but honestly, they're definitely worth it. You kind of, everything that you've done kind of comes to fruition there, and you get to see, the people that you're helping, the members. So.
So Stephanie or Leanne?
Go ahead. So my unglamorous work, I'm going to start off small because I was talking with one of the mentoring programs that I was a part of at NIU, was the Braven Fellowship. So now I'm considered a PAF. And we were having a conversation about handling multiple projects at the same time and how it's different from college, where, you have your one class on Tuesdays, your next class on Wednesday. In the professional world, it's not really the case. You have to monitor all of your projects simultaneously and make sure that they're all moving forward at the appropriate time. It's really important to remember the deadlines of your assigned projects, because you're not just working on one project. You're not just working on one membership type of billing and one annual meeting. Sometimes there's sub meetings as well that go along with that. So I think the biggest challenge for some folks just coming right out of college is realizing how many projects you have, and what does your organization skill look like? Are you the type of person that has to write it down on a calendar? Because I know I am. You can't see what's behind you, but my entire year is written on that wall right now. So it's finding a way to measure the projects that you have assigned, when you want to see some deadlines, and when you need to start to realize, maybe I should move this around and take priority over this. So nonetheless, that is usually the day-to-day task, because I'm sure, as Caitlin's seen as well, there's always the spontaneous inquiry that comes about and rechanges your day too. So some other parts to consider about associations is that I believe they all have an annual meeting. I mean, correct me please, Julianne. So with that, your day doesn't always stay the same throughout the whole year. Sometimes you're building up to larger scale projects that take multiple team levels and multiple contracted partners to develop. So what am I getting at here? In conclusion, you need to ensure that you have a timeline for your projects, and you need to figure out what works best for you to stay organized while you handle and manage your upcoming projects.
I love that. And I'm thinking back, so like I said, it's been about 10 years since I've been there, although those are still my people. So we still meet, we try every other month to get together. And but for us, the Realtor Association, my job was we worked, the cycle was the 4 meetings of our year. So it was very much like ramping up for that meeting, and then you're there at the meeting, and then and then doing all the follow-up, and then the ramp up starts again. So I have friends who work in trade associations and other membership kind of organizations that find that sometimes they discover they have a little OCD, or maybe other kinds of depressive kinds of personalities, that up and down is very hard. It's not like more steady work sometimes. At least for us, it was very much like that. And Caitlin mentioned, like, there's some stuff that's so glamorous. I remember thinking my very first meeting when I started at NAR was in Hawaii, and people are like, oh my God, you're so lucky. That is so fun. And it was amazing. And if I would have gotten out of Hilton Hawaiian Village at all in the 6 days that I was there, that would have been amazing. But like, it was my first meeting. I didn't know that I should just like stay a couple extra days. And so I saw like more of, the Honolulu airport. Then that was my biggest day off. So on the other hand, though, we had meetings every single year, at least once a year, in Washington, D.C., and staff always stayed at one hotel. And I knew the staff people there. I knew the front desk people. I asked for the same room every time, so there were some things like that were kind of nice. But I would say that my experience was that you could anticipate a lot of the work, but then some stuff would happen in the industry that you would not know was really coming. And so that meant changing education programs or changing speakers, bringing in people at the last minute. And this was kind of before we were doing a lot of online stuff. So you really had to be on your toes and ready to kind of change direction quickly. So I will also agree with Caitlin again, and the unglamorous part was like being in Las Vegas and walking out of my room at 6:30 in the morning, and there were limos of people just pulling in because they'd been up all night, and then going back to my room at like 10:30 at night after a dinner and being like, I have to be up in like 6 hours. This is nuts.
Worse is when it's your speaker.
Right. Yeah. So fun, and also not maybe always as glamorous as it seems, but at the end, worth it. Good people and good pay, and always something different to do.
Yeah, but you got to pick up all kinds of keychains that said where you were, the macadamia nut gifts to send to people. I used to save those lanyards with my name tag, and then, I just stopped.
I will say this is kind of funny. As my kids got older and they were like in elementary school and middle school, they would travel with me to meetings sometimes. And like if we went someplace fun, some of my kids' favorite memories are of going to my meetings, and I would be in the meetings. But they were like, do you remember how fun San Diego was? And I'd be like, no, I don't remember, but I'm glad you had a good time.
My mom did the same for us. It was always neat to see your parents in action, so to say,
Yeah.
behind the scenes. They're working hard at registration and whatnot. But it's a great memory when they turn back.
Really been a great conversation. I'm inspired by the humanity and the real detail, the love of your job that you bring to it, and the detail of this conversation. It's bringing me back as well. So thank you. I was wondering if we could pivot just a little bit about what skill set is needed to succeed at your job, and how did you prepare for this work? So any one of you can give us a start. I don't feel the particular need to call on.
I could go ahead and start. I think that specifically with the NNGO major or certificate program, just having that base level knowledge of what a nonprofit is, be it 501c3 or C6, I felt it was an advantage because I knew that kind of background part of it. So like when interviewing and things like that, I could kind of speak to that kind of level of like, okay, I know that you're mission driven. I felt more connected to it somehow. So I think that that's important just to kind of keep in mind. And honestly, as much as my major helped me, a lot of it was just kind of learning as you go. Like I said, I had no intention of being in online education, but as I started to do more and more of it, I'm like, all right, I need help in this area. I'm going to find that professional development. So I guess that in and of itself is a skill set, is knowing what your weaknesses are and then finding a way to kind of bridge that gap. And then for me, I worked retail for too many years. And so that customer service part of it, member services, has very much helped me because you got to keep that cool head when you're talking to, people that, pay membership dues. So.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and follow up. I think, like I said before, organization plays the biggest pivotal moment for the skill sets that's needed in a regular job, let alone a nonprofit job. And communication, you have to know when to say something, who to say it to, and what should we do about it. With that, it's really teamwork, because remember, we're all working towards the same goal. We're all working for the same association who's trying to follow their mission and deliver for their members. Another way to prepare for this work is to ask questions. You're a part of a team and they're there for you. So if you're not sure about what the project is or exactly what's going on, talk to your supervisor with case presented details. So that way you can have some sort of direction to go with that subject.
Love that. And I think when I got my first position at NAR, it was because my boss said, my degree, number one. So we didn't have NNGO or CLCE then, but I was a political science major. And understanding policy and how policy impacts communities was something it was important for her that I understood that. I was a decent writer. I wasn't a great one, but I was good enough. And she had been a journalism communications major at Northern. And I remember, man, probably that first year turning in copy for like courses I was designing or promotion or even letters, whatever, and getting it back. And it would, like, the editing was crazy. I was so embarrassed. I was like, I thought I was a pretty decent writer, but she was a journalist. And man, I thank her to this day. Every time we go out, I'm grateful because I learned how to be a good writer and how to think about different voices and who I was writing for. And so that was important. The other thing that I think she had mentioned was that my work in campus organizations. She thought that that showed like some leadership ability, but also the ability to get along with different kinds of people. And I think that's one of the really great things about NIU is, you know, in our classrooms, we have so many different kinds of students who are in our classroom, and getting to work with in group projects and learn about backgrounds of different kind of people. That was helpful to me, because then going to a big national organization, I always you had to be kind of on. So I learned some social skills there as well, but I had some going into it, but that, you know, to Caitlin's point too, and I think Stephanie talked about this, is, you know, when you're in a membership driven organization, there's that line of, we never said like the member's always right, but you really did have to listen and then kind of balance what you knew or believed or thought, you know, was the goal of the department and what a member wanted. So I think good communication skills, good social networking skills, writing skills. And I don't think that we necessarily learned this in college, but hopefully we develop it as when we're in college, is the ability to be adaptable and flexible, because there are some things, you know, that happen that you just can't predict. And that is, I did get to learn some of that in college.
If I may, I'd like to add on to that because it brings a really good point. It sounds like our personalities, Caitlin, Julianne, and myself, are very similar on the DISC scale, but I think maybe it might be nice to reach out to the reserved classmate, to the more shy classmate who doesn't feel like they're ready for face-to-face communication with members. There's many different jobs that go into being a nonprofit. For example, FMA has over 80 plus employees in the United States, Canada as well. And not everyone goes to the annual meeting. Not everyone answers the phone. But what does that mean is that at the end of the day, you still have to be a really good neighbor. And when you start to make those small connections, it does impact the overall vision of the organization.
You know what, Stephanie, I'm so glad you brought that up. I hadn't really been thinking of that in that manner. So NAR, we have two headquarters. Chicago's our headquarter, but then our lobbying headquarter is in DC. So when I was last there, we had about 350 national employees. But then we have employees all over the country in the state associations and the local associations. So my experience at the national organization might be very different than those at the state or local association. I think a lot of the skills could be the same. But for sure, my job was working with, I was a staff member for committees. I was a liaison with committees. So it is much different in that. And I think that's an interesting thing to think about for all of our organizations, like how many different divisions there are, departments.
Absolutely.
Yep, there are a lot. And although you're right, our three jobs tend to be, they sound like they were very similar. There's so many more kinds of jobs at trade associations, but I think in a lot of trade associations, we start in these kinds of jobs, unless you have a specific area. At least I know at NAR, like if you could go into finance, you could go into tech or IT, you could go into library sciences, you could go into policy. That's kind of weird. The three of us, none of us did that.
And that's okay.
No.
Everyone has their own skill set. And what's cool about the nonprofits is you can still be involved.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also struck by the mentioning that folks that are not outgoing. We had a couple conversations where someone who did not identify as an extrovert, who is an introvert, and this person's tagline was, "You too can succeed at, you know, development and fundraising." So, you know, people do need to identify their strengths, but also one nice thing about my job in particular is I learn new things every day, and like to be open to stretch yourself, I think is part of the challenge of working in a mission-driven organization, particularly you all. I'm just curious how you got your job. Like, I hear all kinds of questions from folks that are about to graduate, like, how do I get that job? So definitely, if you can like think through how that happened for you, how did you make the leap?
Yeah. Can I add on? LinkedIn. LinkedIn 100%. Make sure your profile is up to date and you are standing by with your resume. That's how I found FMA.
Mine was so when I worked at the American Academy of Pediatrics, the wife of someone I worked with worked at my current organization. So it was it's all about who you know, I guess. So, he knew my skill set where I currently was and was like, hey, I think this job might be great for you. So that's how I got to where I am now in my current association.
Yeah, for me, like I said, I got my job out of the Chicago Tribune. I didn't even know what the organization was. So that was a very long time ago. Obviously, they do things differently now. I think Stephanie is right that LinkedIn is the place now. But also I think there's NPO.net. There is Indeed.
Association Forum.
Yep, Association Forum, ASAE, American Society of Association Executives. Those are all organizations that you can kind of tap into for careers. In Chicago, Forefront is a convening organization. But it often is, it's been fun to know, like Caitlin and I she was one of my first connections on LinkedIn, way seems like way back, Caitlin, right? When LinkedIn kind of started. She was the first person I thought of. I was like, oh, I know Caitlin had worked at a trade association. So I do think that that networking that way is a really great way to find jobs right now.
And for those who are current Huskies, either in the Zoom room or going to watch this on YouTube, found out that a lot of folks prefer watching things on YouTube as opposed to being in a Zoom room because of the repetitive eye strain and being part of the conversation. It just doesn't feel the same. So they're prioritizing, making sure that they watch us on YouTube. But for those of us who are NAU Huskies, just on Julianne's last point, we are having the spring networking event this right after we come back from spring break, Wednesday the 20th. So I'm gonna see if I can multitask and put the flyer as a link in the chat. But some of you all mentioned specific organizations to check out. So if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. But Julianne in particular, you mentioned a couple groups to check out. If you can put those links in the chat so people can see, that would be great. Really great. Thank you. So last question that I have, and I hope that folks in the audience will be not shy to ask your questions in a moment. But what advice do you have for current students, particularly for people who aren't seniors?
So for me, I would just talk to any and all nonprofits that you come into contact with, because you never know if it will be the right fit or not. I did 2 different internships when I was at NIU, and I didn't end up in either of those types of organizations, but it's so much more than just reading a definition of like what a trade association is. And so I just remember being in this major and always coming into contact with local nonprofits and just talking to them about a similar conversation of what we've just had. What's your day-to-day like? what do you like about your job? What's the tough part of your job? I think it's just really being curious about those things and seeking out that information so that you can kind of have a better idea of what you want to do when you graduate.
Well said. I was a very eager student. I was very ready to graduate and get to work. So I was trying the best I could with my courses, but I was always working and always out in the field, whether it be with a part-time job, an internship, or a full-time job. And one question nobody asked me until the end was, what's your non-financial goal? A raise or a higher paycheck will always catch your attention, but when you get that higher check, you still have to work for it. So what's going to motivate you to genuinely stay engaged beyond monetary incentives?
Ooh, that's a good one, Stephanie.
Took me a
Yeah.
minute. It took me like 6 months actually, and then I messaged him back on LinkedIn and gave him an answer. So give
Yeah.
me an answer if you're watching this. Find me on LinkedIn and let me know.
Yeah. I think that's a great thing to start asking yourself while you're in school. And also, I think, in NNGO, we work really hard to, I think, provide opportunities for things like the networking event. We know some of these things are not skills that come easily to people. And also they're not skills that we learn just one and done. And so coming to things like a networking event, you get to practice, and honestly, it's kind of low stakes when you're an undergrad, right? You might see those people again and you might not. But at the same time, you might meet somebody who has a connection someplace that you never would have thought about, and you got to meet them that way. So I think taking advantage of all of those kinds of things, and looking now at, I think my being involved on campus as much as I was very helpful for me in getting that first job, because it did show that I had the ability to work within a structure, like a membership structure, if you will, and that I had experience in that way. So on campus, we talk about this in an NGO too, like take advantage of everything. There's tons of clubs, there's nonprofit, like service-oriented clubs, internships. We have a lot of students who go either from their internship back to that internship site itself. Folks love hiring our interns, or to a different kind of organization that's like, oh, well, you already have some experience with this kind of work from your internship. So I think getting involved like that. But also we've talked a little about being curious, and some of the things that we're putting in the chat. I mean, I'm looking at American Society of Association Executives right now, and there are 16 open jobs in Illinois right now. And I don't see any of our organizations on here, but you can see some of the titles of jobs, you guys. And those, there might be some that you wouldn't have ever thought of. One that I might be applying for right now, it's actually at my old, no, I'm teasing, at my old job, but manager of governance and global volunteer services. Like, what? We didn't have that when I was there. But director of marketing and communications, innovation and development. Let's see, staff accountant. Yeah, a lot of governance, digital marketing and communications. Yeah, foundation and development strategy. So I think looking at these kinds of organizations can help you even just see, like, what are the kinds of jobs that are available.
Thank you for that. Really, really good advice. And you can't leave, so that's not I wasn't laughing at that joke. That was not a good joke. So, and Stephanie mentioned that to reach out to you on LinkedIn. Would folks mind putting their contact information in for people to follow up in case you have a question, and make those connections and those contacts? And it's, what we're This is our fifth conversation that we've been doing, and something that is it's resonating from our previous conversation, to be true to yourself, to be genuine, and to have real relationships, not transactional relationships. But you do a good job and somebody's wife notices that you're doing a good job, they would say, hey, actually, you might be interested in this. So, your work speaks for itself, and treating people as people, not as, not as numbers, I think is really important to any career, but particularly in this sector where we used to say that it was the nonprofit sector. I worked in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we used to say that the nonprofit sector was, if you weren't a McAllister graduate, you had to know each other. It was like every organization. It seemed like it was really just a small town, and you do stick out for things you say and things you do, and in either, I think it can cut either way. If you're known as not being a team player or wanting to hog the spotlight, you get known for that as well. But that was all the questions that we had prepared. Do folks want to bounce around, like ask each other questions, or should we go to the chat in the Zoom? Yeah, see if other folks have questions for you all.
Well, I want to ask a question to Caitlin and Stephanie while our audience is maybe thinking of their questions. Caitlin and Steph, now that you've worked in a trade association for a while, do you see yourself ever leaving?
No.
Ditto. They really take care of you. And I don't know about you, Caitlin, but I feel so respected and I feel heard. And I feel like I'm serving a different industry and a different type of being than myself sometimes. So I appreciate the lens as well as the mutual respect. So if they'll have me, I'll be here.
Yes, I completely agree. The support that I've received from coworkers, from those that have managed me, I just really feel like the organization has invested in me, and so I'm invested in them.
Especially with the connections you make. When I was leaving my first association, you have to remember who you've met and who will speak high of you. You can always ask for letters of recommendations. This is how you network.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hadn't really thought about leaving my organization, but I was talking to Caitlin and Stephanie at the very beginning. I was doing my job at the trade association, but I was also volunteering for 2 different nonprofits in my community, and I noticed I was sad that the education that we were providing our members at the trade association was just so, it was stellar. It was really well done. It was packaged really nicely. It was updated. But the stuff that we were giving to our volunteers and sometimes our staff at different local nonprofits wasn't that great. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And I knew the answer was money. Like at trade associations, we have membership dollars. People are paying us to do that. But that's why I came back to NIU to get another degree. And it just happened that we were starting nonprofit and NGO studies at that time. That's not why I came back. But it's been a sweet surprise. But also I will say it is like, I do in part miss the days, what you guys talked about. I think professional development is something that trade associations really take seriously with their employees. I know at NAR there is not a lot of turnover. There are easily people who have been there for 40 years. And, like me getting my degree, even that continues. You can take different, like, I'd like to try something different. This has been fun, but I'd like to be in a different department. And there's different ways to grow in trade associations too, that might not be open to you in other kinds of nonprofits. You might have to move nonprofits, mostly because they're not as big as our organization. So like these trade associations. Yeah, so I'm not surprised that both of you are happy where you are. That's great.
So, we have some time for other participants in the meeting to ask your questions and have them answered. So don't be shy. Feel free to unmute yourself, type in the chat, however you feel comfortable.
You know, what's fun about associations as well is we all use, well, so far, what I've seen, Caitlin, I would love to hear your perspective on this, is we all use different CRM databases, customer relations management database is where, and that's where you keep all your member profiles and whatnot. Has it been easy to leave an association and pick up another type of CRM, or what's your experience with that? How's that going? It's not something in a classroom.
It's not CRM, but our learning management system, we're implementing a new one currently. So that's been a pretty intense year. So a lot goes into that, and we're also looking to replace our CRM. I feel like no one likes any of them. But
Industry speaks.
yes. But yeah, no, it's an adjustment for all of, for each one, but you just kind of, again, you go on the fly, you just kind of learn what you need to learn. So.
Right.
So there's a question in the chat. Do you work for a CRNA program?
Yes, I do. We are the organization so CRNA stands for Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist. Say that 5 times fast. So yes, those are the members we serve. And I'm impressed that you know what a CRNA is. I did not until I interviewed for the job, so.
In your early days, did you keep an acronym sheet?
I did. There are just so many.
Right. I used to write them down as well. And then eventually the HR department just started to hand it out to new hires as well.
I'm laughing just looking at this ASAE job listing. There's some things I've never heard of before. Just like an organization called the North American Neuromodulation Society. Like,
Oh, that one's new.
so that is it? Like, I've never
Yes.
heard of
Yeah,
that
I was
before.
looking at them too the other day.
Wow.
So if you had to sum up your feelings for your associations in one word, how would you do it? This is from the chat.
I would say passion, whether it's from the employees or the members. It's like that's your passion for the profession is why you do what you do day in and day out.
That's great. I'd have to go with the letter P as well. I think my organization is very progressive. We do our best to make sure that every member moves forward at any point in their career. We try to renovate and create new content that's more relevant to the members, whether they be at trade school, whether they be 6 years in, or whether they're closer to retirement. So I think my organization is very progressive. And we have female board members.
Nice. Nice. I think the organization that I had been with tends to be really innovative, and there's a lot of different councils under the National Association of Realtors that are they work with all of the different, like, realtors can come in all different kind of flavors, So maybe there's a women's council of real estate, there's a residential council of real estate, commercial, Latino, buyers agents, sellers agents, like there's a lot of different specialties. And so I think they innovate, our members demand, they demand education and training and support in a lot of different areas. And so I think NAR has to innovate a lot, and also they do a lot of work on Capitol Hill for home ownership in the United States. So I wouldn't necessarily say innovative in that, but collegial. They work together with a lot of different industry partners on that kind of legislation, both national and state legislation on home ownership.
Thank you. I was hoping you would come up with the letter P, but you didn't. So
I couldn't come up with it.
extra credit for someone who can think of that. In the meantime, Jake Evans had a follow-up question. How do you think your job will change when they change the qualifications for anesthetist to doctorate?
So interestingly enough, the members that I work with, so ones that are extremely involved on committees, on the board of directors, on different task force, they already have their doctorate. So I think that a lot of those CRNAs it's just kind of becoming common practice, and they want to further their education because there is I don't necessarily think that people look down on them because they're not physicians, but I think that them having that extra knowledge and degree is kind of just like what they want to have. They want to show that off. They want to continue that education. So really, like I said, most of the people that I work with already have that doctorate. So I think it's maybe I'm wrong, but in the way I see it, it's like a generational thing too. I think that a lot of people entering the profession are just really hungry for that additional knowledge. So, and in the medical field, you really do have to be passionate about it and want to learn more all the time. So I don't see it as being that big of a hurdle, I guess. And I guess and you also asked how my job would change. Honestly, I think I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. The doctorate programs have their own thing, and I'm not gonna step on anyone's toes there. And we'll just keep offering what we're offering. And I'm shocked that someone is asking me these questions about CRNAs. So thank you, Jake.
I think one thing that we didn't talk about, and I don't know if it's true for Stephanie or you, Caitlin, but I know like at the Realtor Association, we have a foundation. So there's that piece, but also the Realtor Association partners with Habitat for Humanity all across the country. And so I think that was a fun part about being in a trade association, is that we were connected with a service kind of nonprofit. And so at every one of our meetings, we would do builds with local habitats. And our foundation sponsors just all kinds of awards, good neighbor programs, and things that realtors do in their communities. So I don't know if both of your organizations have those similar kinds of things.
We do. We have Nuts, Bolts, and Thingamajigs, which hosts camp grants to different schools who would like to have children the ages of 12 to 16 come on in and build a project together. This is a nationally recognized program, and they have several different pairs that they collaborate with in order to obtain those camp grants, and then they distribute them to the students. And then once the student completes high school, they also give out scholarships for them to go to CTE schools. And essentially what the Fabricators and Manufacturers Association serves is welders, anybody who does punching and pressing of metals. It's the metal forming industry. So we're really struggling to see the new generation of manufacturers come into the workforce. And with these camp grants, we're hoping to see a new generation of tech supports, as well as they also have this program for, excuse me, it's I will have to come back to it, excuse me, but they have the summer manufacturing camps, and it's a diverse program that accepts many different students into the local schools.
We have a foundation as well, so they offer several grants, and some to actually like scholarships to get your doctorate degree and things like that. There's also we partner with an organization for substance use disorder. So that's kind of a big thing in the wellness space for anesthesia providers. So, you know, if you have an anesthesia provider with substance use disorder, or you have a coworker, faculty, things of that nature, there's a big emphasis on, you know, providing the resources needed to help those people find help and meet them where they're at. You know, we have like a 24-hour helpline specific to anesthesia providers, so they can call that number and get resources that way. And then there's also a really big push as of late. There is a shortage of anesthesia providers now. So there's a big push to kind of evaluate rural hospitals to, you know, figure out what those hospitals need and kind of meet the need in terms of anesthesia providers. So it's a little bit higher level, but you know, we're seeing that the gap could be filled with our members to offer anesthesia services in those more rural communities that don't have a big hospital by them. So.
Awesome.
Well, I've been really inspired listening to the three of you. Really humbled by the work that you all have been able to do in such a short time. Establish yourself as leaders in your field and really articulate the vision for moving forward and vision for being good at doing good, doing well by doing good. And I think that the folks that we have here on Zoom, and certainly the folks that are going to watch this on YouTube, are going to really appreciate the frank advice that you offered about the importance of maintaining solid relationships, about, you know, staying true to your passions, about the clarity of purpose, and, you know, that they may actually do a little bit of homework to look into the trade association as a field, that it does seem to be very people-centered, progressive, and investing in its members and its employees. Because, you know, as was said, helping me, helping others, you know, this has really been a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you all taking the time. Any last words before we wrap up?
I think I'm going to hop on. I had such a great trade association experience that it's something that I've just always wanted our students to know about. But also, I think Chicago is like it goes between Chicago and Washington, D.C., where's the trade association capital of the world. And so I'm not sure who's ahead of that right now. But Chicago is a really big trade association town. So there's plenty of jobs, I think, that are, you know, available in this area. And the people watching and the people here might decide that this isn't for them, that they want to do something more direct service in some way. This is, I think, just a little bit of a change in how we look at who we're serving, and in the end, who benefits from that. So I'm really glad that Stephanie and Caitlin were able to join us, and we have a handful of other alum who work for a couple other trade associations. So I'm glad that we had a chance to have the conversation tonight. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for having us.